Hello, my name is MeriMcCoy-Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of Dovetail Learning, and I'm very excited to appear on the Online ProsperityShow. Today's show, we're going to be talking about resilience and how it's the foundation for helping you become the person that you want to be in the world, how it can help you with your relationships with others, how it can foster your well-being and your happiness.
Now, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your premium destination for exclusive insights into the journeys of remarkable individuals who are shaping our world. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we've got a truly inspiring guest whose work is actually transforming lives across the globe. Now, Meri, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Not only are you doing fabulous, but you're looking fabulous as well. I like that jacket that you've got going on there. That's just cut with a black scarf and things like that. Have you got a stylist or something behind the scenes there that we have?
I just love color. Color makes me happy. So why wouldn't I put on something that makes me happy?
Absolutely. And I love that response because so many people are just in doom and gloom, and especially with everything else that's happening around the world, they are actually dressing and mirroring what it is that they're scrolling in their newsfeed. And I'm happy we're already starting on a very colorful note there, Meri. Now, for those that are watching right now, this is not a fashion show. We are actually talking transformation and shaping the world, one bright color at a time. So joining us is MeriMcCoy-Thompson, the Executive Director of Dovetail Learning and also the co-author of TheHeart of Resilience, Nurturing Your Inner Strength with a Joyful Life. Now, Meri has dedicated her career to fostering resilience and social emotional intelligence in individuals of all ages, and her extensive experience in the nonprofit leadership space has been coupled also with her love and passion for empowering others, which has actually made her become a leading voice in the work that she does, and that is the field of personal development. And I'm really excited about this to discover her journey and what it is that she has been working on. Now, Meri, I know we've, introduced you to the show and things of that nature, but I understand you've actually lived in 4 continents, right? And you've worked in 3 of those continents. That's right. Yeah. That must have been a massive collection of maybe colorful jackets.
Yes, it's one of the things I love. I mean, first, West African culture, beautiful clothing. Indian culture, love it. I mean, if I could dress in either of those 2 without feeling like I was appropriating somebody else's culture, I would do it all the time. It's so joyful. Love it. Yeah. It was just a side thing, but why not? Enjoy.
Absolutely. And obviously that really showcases the kind of person that you are and the extensiveness of experience and exposure that you've had, because so many people would only know, the area that they live in, which means they're not as informed as you possibly would have been. But the one thing that I might not like about all of that is the changing adapters. When you're trying to charge your phone and you have to have a different one for every different content.
I have a collection. I do have a collection. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, but the whole thing was a privilege. I mean, what a privilege to be able to meet and work with people, so many different people in so many different places. I feel my life has been blessed by that opportunity, and I wish more people could have it because it would be so enriching.
Absolutely. Well, I would suppose that your wardrobe is actually like the United Nations, right? Like, every different color, every different continent represented in there.
That's right.
Absolutely. But on a serious note, how has this global experience influenced your approach to resilience and personal growth?
That's really interesting. So I would say, first of all, I loved it. I've enjoyed every moment of that in terms of just the exposure. And one of the things it taught me, I worked in mostly health and education nonprofits around the world. And as I did that, what we were doing is very important, and all the work that I was doing in it, and I know it made a difference for people. And I know that some people could thrive with very little, and other people could have what other people would consider so much, and they would struggle. And so it was always a question for me as I went through this, like, what's the difference? Why do some people have such a strong amount of resilience and they can thrive in very little? And why do other people seem to get knocked down and have difficulty getting up? So over time, and especially as I became exposed to the work of Dovetail Learning, because it was already ongoing for 15 years before I joined it, I realized, wow, Dovetail Learning had some real answers in terms of that. And my colleagues there had really discovered some important things about resilience. And the more I worked with them and learned what the approach was, and we co-developed the We AreResilient approach together, I just saw how transformative it could be for so many people. And that's what got me very excited about the work.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that snippet of your life. You see, Meri, I've got two daughters. One is 10 and one is 6 years of age. And always wanted to teach them and expose them to different cultures and things of that nature, And the one thing that I've always told them, if they don't finish their food, that there's hungry kids from Africa. But you know what they always tell me, Meri? They always tell me, you're from Africa and you're not hungry. And I can... From that, you know what I take? I take that so many other people, they don't actually grasp that concept of what you've actually said by actually being immersed in these cultures. So maybe you can share how this cultural immersion have actually helped you understand that sort of resilience, because some people wouldn't have a concept. Yeah.
That's true. I mean, and the reality is all of us can only work with what we have and what we've experienced. It's one of the things I like about our concept, the cultural patterns, because we learn to accept we learn to see that we actually have a particular lens, and through that lens about how the world is supposed to work. And that other people might have a completely different lens because they've received different messages about how the world is supposed to work. And so when you understand those lenses, it reduces the conflict, because you understand, oh, these people have a reason for thinking something that I think is crazy. And then you understand, oh, I think something that they might think is crazy. And you kind of understand this gap in perception and where it comes from, why it might happen. Small example. Obviously, I don't know, obviously, but for decades in the United States, we've been working on improving women's access, women's rights. There's still a long way to go, but there is a fundamental shift about how men and women should interact together and what should happen, whether it's in the workplace or personal. When I was working in Kenya, some of the women were telling me the most profound part of Obama's visit there, President Obama's visit, was when he held the umbrella over his wife's head, i.e., he saw himself in service to his wife. And that had a profound effect on them, coming from a culture where they felt very much like men did not see themselves as serving their wives or women in that way. And it's just a small example of, something I would take for granted. Of course my husband would hold an umbrella over my head if it was raining and he had one, to people living in a culture they didn't have. And conversely, they had aspects of their life they felt like people should visit in the hospital. And so in the United States, you wouldn't visit someone in the hospital unless you were really close to them. You wouldn't consider that part of their healing. And yet the communities and the people that I was talking to and working with in Kenya, they considered an important part of healing for all the community to come to visit someone in the hospital, right? Neither one is wrong. They're just different perspectives. They're different ways about how we should behave in the world. So for me, I love that learning. I love understanding that something the way I have learned about the way something should be is not the way somebody else sees it because they've grown up in a different place or with different cultural patterns. It's just one of the many things I love about doing the work I do.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you bringing aspects like that, and you're absolutely right. Whenever there was a relative, they, no matter how distant they were, if they were in the hospital, everybody would, shower up and put on your best shoes and go to the hospital. And it was quite funny that at times kids under the age of 12 were not even allowed in the hospital beds just because maybe they might contract something. But you'd see a whole lot of kids waiting outside. They'd done their part of visiting that person that's in hospital. And when I got around here, well, I heard some people were in hospital and I thought, oh, why don't we go visit them?
Yes.
And no one wanted to go there. Even people that had traumatic experiences. Like one of my friends, I'm going to say this with utmost love and respect, they had a stillbirth. And I was one of the first people to go there. And they actually didn't want anyone around them.
Exactly.
And I didn't know how to feel about that, Meri.
Yes. And that's what we call a cultural pattern, because it's what we should do or what we shouldn't do. Messages passed on by our family or community or those we love or society about how we should act. So we have a lot in our book and in our work about helping people recognize these cultural patterns and removing the judgment from them and understanding where they come from, and then just making a decision about whether it's serving me or not. Obviously, going to visit people in the hospital, while important for you in the context in which you grew up in, is not helpful for you in your current context. It doesn't make sense and people might get offended, right? And yet maybe if you talk to someone else who came from Zimbabwe or a similar situation, they would be, yeah, let's do it together. So understanding when it works and when it doesn't, and being able to see it first as, oh, this is a cultural pattern I have. That's the trick. That's when we get an awareness about things like that is when it's so exciting and helpful.
Yesterday, now that you've just brought it up, I'm now really seeing it. Yesterday, I got so angry at a kid on a train and he doesn't know it. And I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything about it. But there was an older woman that was standing next to him and he was just fiddling on his phone. And I kept saying in my head, young man, there's an older lady who could be using that seat, but that's right. And it's things like that. I'm now getting what you're saying. Now, but your work sort of emphasizes the importance of this social emotional learning for adults.
That's right. That's right.
What does that benefit anyone if they're never going to experience or see it in action?
Well, we all need social emotional learning. So it gets back to the definition of resilience. So we define resilience, right? First as, of course, it helps us get up when we've fallen down, like the basic thing that people think about resilience, right? So it's sort of a definition of resilience, but we also define it as the awareness, patterns, and skills that help us become the best version of ourselves, for our families, for our school and workplace, for our community, and for the world. So that's why we want everyone to have these skills, because we know that there's a lot of struggles about how do we become the better version of ourselves? How do we actually get these skills that can help us with relationships? I mean, you list 10 struggles you have, and I could probably give you 10 ideas about how that can be improved through the work that we do. Whether you're recently divorced, whether your kid is struggling in school, whether you're arguing with your husband, whether you don't know how to pay your bills, whether your mother is sick, whether you're doing elder care, whether you're a teenager struggling with anxiety. I mean, the list, our biggest issue is that since everybody can benefit, it's hard for us to give a message that people understand who they are. But it's true. It's one of the reasons we've actually started an advice column called Ms. Resilient in Curious Christie, so that we can give advice and let everybody know this advice column on Substack, so people can see themselves in very specific people that write in. But we think everybody can benefit from social emotional learning skills.
Absolutely. And obviously, thank you so much. You did send your book across, The Heart of Resilience. And in there, you talk about protective patterns, in the way that people do. Could you maybe explain what these are and how they actually impact our daily lives?
Yes, I will. But first, I want to finish the answer to the other question, which is in that book, we have more than 100 stories of different people who've been impacted. And the reason we have those is so that people can see themselves in all these different people, right? If whoever you are, you might be able to find, oh, this person's like me, and they've benefited from a skill or pattern in the book. So that's the reason we thought it was really important to include a lot of real people's stories. And we spent a lot of time interviewing people. So that was fun. So protective patterns, what are protective patterns? Well, protective patterns are those patterns about how we react to the world. They give us our reactive resilience, and that is how we react when we feel vulnerable. So when we feel vulnerable, maybe socially, economically, physically, all sorts of vulnerability, we react with a pattern. And we go through these 6 types of patterns. They're everything from distrusting, hypervigilance, hyper-caretaking, avoiding, defending, and attacking. So, small example, things that happen in my life. One of my go-to protective patterns is attacking. And because right now I'm living with my husband, my children are grown, so he's the one who will get the brunt of the attacking. And it can be small things. It can be something like he comes in and he asks me an IT question, and I don't have time to answer him. So I'll snap back at him. I'll be aggressive. Oh no, can't you figure it out? Did you look at Google? Da 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 da. Right? And then I don't answer him in a kind, calm way. And it's because I feel vulnerable, and maybe it's something silly like I'm trying to get something done and I'm on deadline. I don't have time to answer his IT questions. So now somebody else might use a defending. Why are you asking me? Is there something I need? Or they might be hyper caretaking. Well, let's sit down. I'm going to go through everything on your computer and we'll try to figure all this out together. And how can I help you? And they don't do their own work because they're so busy caring for them. So people use different protective patterns. They can be helpful. There are situations that they can be helpful in. For example, my mother had Alzheimer's for 7 years, and I would get a lot of texts about all the issues that the family was having, and I would just not answer them. I mean, not ever, but sometimes I would just put it away and say, I'm not going to look at my phone for 2 hours. And I'm just avoiding what the crisis is because I just don't want to deal with it. And that's what I was doing. Now, it was helpful because maybe I needed to do something else, but you can't do it forever. It might move into the harmful place, right? It's not serving me forever. So understanding when those patterns are helping us and when they're harming us is a huge part of the We Are Resilient approach and a huge part of the book, because once we see, oh, I am doing that, then we can make a decision, is that going to help our heart? And also when something comes, for example, right now in the United States, you may have heard, we have a lot going on in our political situation. And so there's a lot of things that are happening. And when the news comes, like, what do we do with that news, right? Do we let ourselves get hijacked? Do we get angry and go on social media and attack everyone? Do we start defending ourselves? Or I'm going to turn off the news, I'm going to avoid it? All of those things might be helpful. Maybe we need to avoid the news for a while, and that keeps us in a calmer place. Maybe we need to go and, have some nasty words with our neighbor because our neighbor is doing whatever, right? But they also may be not harmful. And so saying, wait a minute, what is that helping me? How can I deal with this particular thing that makes me feel vulnerable, right? The news is making a lot of people feel anxious and vulnerable. So how do we deal with all those things? Whatever we're struggling and we feel vulnerable in a big or small way, that's when protective patterns really emerge. And learning how to notice them is one of the keys to this approach.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that. Now, while I was looking at this, I looked at hyper caretaking. Yes. And we actually have something called the black tax. And that black tax is, if I explain it to you, you probably understand it, where that whole community coming to the hospital and everything else, right? That same community, when you fly overseas, you're now supposed to look after them, send the elevator down. And yes. And I was just taking a leaf from what you say, that, you know, when your mom, all these things, these text messages were coming in. Now, the thing is, you will be roped into WhatsApp groups. And usually you're not allowed to leave those WhatsApp groups, otherwise you're rude. So I was just wondering how you would tackle, you know, that hyper caretaking, because everyone is going to want a piece. And if they know that you've helped Sally with shoes, now you're going to have to help Sally with the school uniform. And that whole hospital bill will be also landing on you and things like that. And for my migrant families there, you'd understand what I'm talking about.
No, I totally get what you're talking about. That's the advantage of having lived in different cultures. I totally see. It's a very real dilemma, right? First of all, I would label it as a cultural pattern, right? You even called it a black tax, right? It's a cultural pattern of how are we supposed to deal with people who are asking us for money? How are we supposed to deal with people in financial need, right? And some people come from situations, communities or families in which we always give back. And other people come from, your job is to make yourself independent and only help if it's not going to hurt you. Those are two totally different ways of looking at what you call the black tax. They're both valid, but you have to decide how you're going to play in one. Now, you brought up the hyper caretaking. So hyper caretaking is a protective pattern that you use when you feel vulnerable. And that's when you actually are doing more than is necessarily helpful for the person you're doing. So you talk about Sally who needs the shoes and the clothes. If you were be hyper caretaking, if you said, okay, Sally, now we're going to get a tutor for you and we're going to do whatever, even though Sally's like, I don't need a tutor. I just need my clothing for school, right? So hyper caretaking is when you're enabling people necessarily, or you're doing it so you're so depleted. And I think maybe that's the other thing where you're like, well, maybe I'm hyper caretaking if I have to, because I'm depleting myself to the point I can't, function, and it's not healthy for me. And that's the line that you can just choose for yourself. Like, okay, is this an appropriate amount that I can be giving back to the families and the people who are asking, or when does it become a situation where I'm going to be depleted? Now, one thing I talk a lot about when I talk about hyper caretaking is our phone. Our phone, if it stops working, we don't just throw it away. We plug it in. We're like, oh, it needs to be a recharge, right? So hyper caretaking, and I guess it's nurturing myself. Hyper caretaking is when we don't allow ourselves to nurture ourselves, right? If you get to the point you're not going to be able to help anybody because you've given so much, then that's not going to be helpful for you or for them. I don't know if that's
absolutely. I really appreciate you taking that into consideration, because even if you're flying on a plane, they tell you to put your mask on first. That way you're going to be of help to those that are around you and stuff like that. Now, maybe because obviously we've already gotten on this trajectory, and obviously it's up to you to respond to this or not. You've lost your mom, who you mentioned earlier, to Alzheimer's, and if that's okay for us to go on there, and you've had to deal with that, and also your husband's health sort of issues, whom you're also talking about earlier, with the IT issues and stuff. So while all of this was happening, you're leading an organization. That's not a small feat, where you literally had to do all of these things. How do you conjure that up? And maybe did you use your own resilience practices to support you during these times?
That's a really good question. I will say one of the foundations of the way we share this approach is what we call practice, model, coach. In other words, we insist that people practice it themselves to model it for others before we try to coach people. And it's so important because many social emotional learning programs, especially for children, adults will learn, teachers will learn, educators will learn, and then they'll tell kids to do something, and they'll tell them to do that. And they're not modeling for them how to do it. Not out of any disrespect, but just because they never learned the skills themselves. It's one of the reasons we developed our We Are Resilient approach for adults, because we actually care very much about children and youth and how to reach them. And we know that adults did not have the skills to help children. So we want to help adults so that children can be better. They can have the skills they need. So that's actually why we developed it in the first place, right? So all those helping professions, whether it's doctors or nurses or educators or social workers or parents or grandparents or families or neighbors, we wanted them all to have the skills so they can share it with kids. That was our original purpose. And developing it as a practice model coach, then people realized, oh, this, I need to do this myself. So people often come to our work, whether it's educators or healthcare workers or social workers, for a particular professional training. And they're like, I'm coming because I'm going to help so-and-so that needs help. And then they're like, wow, this is for me too, right? And they understand the impact. That's a long way of saying we have it built into who we are, all of us who work at Dovetail Learning, about how to do this ourselves. We incorporate it into our meetings. We incorporate it into our words. We have common language to talk about the issues. And we walk the walk. So yes, absolutely. I have used this every day that I've taught it, but I've used it particularly in the last year. And I've used it in the last week. I'll just give you an example. I had a professional opportunity that I was really excited about that fell through. And I was devastated. And I'm like, I think I'm just going to feel sad. So this is one of our centering skills, that we have to notice our emotions and pay attention to them. I'm like, well, I think I'm just going to feel sad. And I would, my husband tried to cheer me up. He came in and he's like, oh, it's not so bad. Da, da, da. This is happening. And I'm like, I need to just feel sad for a little bit. You just need to let me do that, which is super hard for someone that you care about. And that's when we move into hyper caretaking. We try to help take away their bad emotions. And I say that as a parent who used to do that for her children. And I am sad and embarrassed that I used to do that for my children when I was growing up, because we're uncomfortable with their sad and bad emotions, right? I say bad emotions, but emotions that make us uncomfortable, right? So I just felt sad. And then by being sad and knowing how to do that, and when I was talking to one of my colleagues, I said, I'm really devastated about this. She said, you might need to just take the afternoon to be sad. And then, we do that for each other. And then by being sad, then I could release it. I noticed myself, I moved through the emotion, and then I was like, oh, okay, now what do we do? What are the 5 opportunities I can take from this obstacle? Right? Because that's our centering skill of positive reframing. How do we change problems and obstacles into opportunities? So I know how to do that. But at that time, I needed noticing myself and feeling sad first. And it's just a small example of what I've done, of course, the whole time I worked there, but particularly over this past year. As you said, I've lost my mother. And then we had the whole property, having to sell our house and working with my siblings in order to disperse all the property, there wasn't a lot, but, furniture and clothing and those kinds of things, which is painful when your mother's lived in the same house for 60 years. And then my husband had a lot of severe health issues. So we had to go through all of that, and we're still going through all of that. And he's on disability now, so then we have to, deal with all of that. There's a lot of challenges in my life, absolutely. And yet I can show up with joy because I know that that's part of also life. One of the important things about resilience is learning a both and attitude. Yes, I have these challenges. This is hard. This is difficult. And recognizing and not walking away from that. And there's miracles of life and joy. You described your 2 children, and just for you telling me about your 6-year-old and your 10-year-old gives me joy because I love kids so much. So being able to hold both those things at the same time is really important.
Absolutely. And I wish so many people would have that practice model and coach sort of scenario, because most people in this world have the do as I say, not as I do mentality. You know what I mean? There is maybe a fitness coach who's literally telling people to go hard, yet their whole life and body even is in shambles and things of that nature. And you just wonder, how is this possible? The doctor who's smoking on his smoking break, and things of that nature. But that's the world that we live in. And I'm happy you've got this We Are Resilient package here. Maybe you can tell us, how it actually works, so that people have an understanding of it. And also, you managed to pull this off during the pandemic when everybody else was coughing into their elbows. You really do have a gluttony for punishment there. I mean, I must say that.
Well, all we have is what we have what life hands us. That's one thing. And all we have control over is how we respond.
But
Right?
Mary,
So yeah.
I'll tell you something. We almost didn't have this show today. I broke my nail and I didn't know what to do with the rest of my day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this is the thing, right? Like I said, we walk the walk. So yeah, to get to the pandemic thing, we had co-developed this approach with M.E.D.I.A Children's Hospital, Oakland, because they were interested in our previous work that we did with kids. And so they said, let's develop something for adults. And they helped us with it. And we launched in February of 2020. And of course, California went down on a lockdown in March, right? Our biggest market, healthcare and education, had no bandwidth at all. And of course, we had to close the office and everybody's remote and blah, 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 blah. And we knew that this approach could be so helpful. So we launched Zoom webinars for parents on March 17th, the day that California did a lockdown, right? We're like, we need to send this out into the world. So we have, our materials are open educational resources. We give away so much for free because that is our values and we lean into that, and we cannot transform the world without giving a lot of things away for free and allowing people to take it and adapt the material for their own communities and continue to share it. We only ask that they give attribution. So we started that in March of 2020, and we've not looked back. We've appreciated that since that's part of our values. Has it been a challenge? Absolutely. Did we go from a staff of 7 to a staff of 2? Yes. Right? Was that heartbreaking to see all the staff dispersed? Horrible. And they all found jobs in their fields within 2 weeks. So that was like, okay, these are really talented people who are meant to go on. Some of them have come back now that we've been able to get some more business again. But yeah, it's super hard. And I'm not trying to paint any picture that it's not. And it's completely aligned with our values. And so people are willing to do a lot to work with us at Dovetail Learning because it's so fulfilling to work with people on this kind of mission.
Well, I can only try and imagine what it was like. Zoom was not quite a thing back then. Everybody was, still on mute, and you can way into 2022. So I can only imagine what it was like, during that time. And kudos to you guys for having done this, because up until now, you've trained thousands of people with the We AreResilient approach. And that is really, really remarkable in and of itself. But with all this training, people might think, but Meri has traveled overseas. She knows all these cultures. She has all these experiences, and she's got all these fancy jackets. Does this actually work on human beings? Is there a particular success story that maybe stands out that really illustrates the transformative power of this work that you've done?
That's a really good question. And I have to say, most of the transformative power has been in the small moments with people, right, that I experience in a training. And that's where my joy is. Just doing a training yesterday, and a woman we talked about protective patterns, we talked about the centering skills, and, the woman's like, I realize I miss nature. I've not been nurturing myself, and I've completely depleted, and I haven't been going outside for a whole year. And this is why I'm so depleted. So people just get aha moments like that, or aha, this cultural pattern. If I only stop having that perspective, I might have an encounter with my wife better. I might stop fighting with my husband. So it's those small moments that make such a difference. We were training professors in Texas last year, and they're like, wow, these are people who, they're STEM professors, which means science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And so just getting them to recognize the importance of understanding people's emotions, right? And they're like, they've never been exposed to that kind of information before. And through the course of the time together, like, wow, I now understand how I might have more empathy for my students who are struggling and what I can do about that, right? So it's those kind of moments more than like seeing one person at one place and they're completely changed. I get little moments from people which is why I love training and why I love talking with people. Because, and then I have people who read the book who then come back to me and say, wow, I have a different relationship with my daughter now, that I understand what she's struggling through and how I can work with her better, right? Or my colleagues, I have a different understanding. There was a clinic who the colleagues, they were telling half their staff that they couldn't speak Spanish because they felt like, well, if you were speaking Spanish in front of the doctors who don't understand Spanish, it was excluding them. And it's like, once they understand like why the women, learning how to talk to each other in a way with empathy, speaking authentically, they were able to work through that kind of workplace dilemma. So it's those kinds of things that I get to experience with people that give me joy and help me continue to do the work. And yes, it's for everybody because I get a whole range. I get everyone from teenagers to 80-year-olds who are dealing with their husbands with cancer or Alzheimer's or other things. Everybody in between, we've done trainings for, and I've seen how it can impact them. You know, a girl who's struggling with her dad, who's pressuring her to be better at soccer than she is. And how do I work with that? And how do I think about that? So.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, this is quite remarkable, you know, because so many people are going through certain things and they think their situation is unique. And they actually think there's no solution or recourse out there. And I think that's the reason why so many people end up making, you know, fatal decisions on something that could have been sorted out or sort of, prevented, so to speak.
Yeah.
So,
yes. And I have to say, you know, our work is preventive mental health. That's really, it's preventive mental health adjacent, maybe is one way to talk about it, but it's preventive mental health. It's not going to solve everybody's problems. There are people who need therapy. This is not or people who need they need medication or deeper things. This won't solve everybody's problem, but it might help you get off the side of the road. It's like the donut tire. It might help you just get enough so that you then can get additional support if you need. Or you might be going along pretty well, and then it just helps you go faster, farther, more about where you want to go, right? So that's why we consider it preventive mental health, right? That can help people.
Absolutely. I quite like that. And the fact that you have others to, you know, learn from, and also you've got the 100 stories that you've managed to gather in the book that actually creates, a very wide spectrum of, you know, possibilities that could happen. But I must ask, how did you manage to put all of those stories together and bring it all into some sort of a really nice little package like that?
Well, we had already developed the approach, right? We've been training the approach for several years, 3 or 4 years before we started writing. So we knew that the first thing people needed to do was learn about their protective patterns and learn about the ways they're reacting to the world. Because if we don't start with how we're reacting to the world and how we might change, then it's very hard to think about anything else because we're still reacting. So we learn about that. And then we talk about our cultural patterns, as I said, how we see the world differently, and then understanding those things. And then the next part of the package is our resilient mindsets. Our resilient mindsets of curiosity, choice, and courage. Curiosity is, how am I being in this situation? Like I said this week, when I was just like kind of upset, and then I'm like, oh, I'm really sad. Oh, that's how I am. So maybe I better pay attention to that so I can react in a way that I want. So how am I being, or how is somebody else? You know, let's be curious about what's happening to somebody else. I was dealing with a work issue, and instead of going in and like, we need this, it's like, can you tell me about what's going on for you? And how is this working for you? Right? And being curious about why people make decisions, or why people make choices or say the things they said. And then you have a whole new context from which to have a conversation. So curiosity is super powerful in so many ways. And then choice. You talk about choice, right? What choices do we have? We only have the choice in how we respond, right? You don't have a choice in this black tax that you're talking about, or all the family relatives that are going to ask you things, and the WhatsApp that you have to be in. You only have a choice in how you respond. And so understanding where we have a choice, and then thinking about what's my most empowering choice? What will give me the feeling that I have the most agency and I can choose the life that I want? Do I want to be enmeshed with these people? Are they giving me joy? Is it that family connection really helping me, or is it not helping me? And how can I come up with a different way? So thinking about choice. And then the last resilient mindset is courage, because this is really hard work. And understanding that we have to be aligned with our values. We have to listen to our inner wisdom to actually do the work in a way that's powerful. Like, what is my inner wisdom telling me? How can I speak up and act in ways that honor my values and will honor my boundaries? So listening to that, right? What is that? And spending time doing that, because a lot of people, they don't give time and space to doing that courage work. And then we give people 6 centering skills, right? How can I feel more grounded in what I'm trying to do, right? And that's noticing myself, maybe breathing mindfully. All of this stuff has a lot of science behind it. That's something we were really clear. Like I said, we developed the first ideas with the Benioff Children's Hospital. We're not going to pull stuff like out of the thin air, right? This has a lot of science behind it. And then we have connecting skills. How can we connect with each other better? And then collaborating skills. And those 2 sets of skills didn't even make it into the book, because we're like, that has to be a second book, because this is enough for one book. 350 pages is enough for one book. But the approach itself has a lot of richness to it, as you can see.
Now, Meri, from all that you're saying and from what I've read and discovered from work that you guys are doing, you're literally giving people back to themselves, because everyone is just leaving humdrumming and doing whatnot and not actually paying attention to what is happening around. I think there's a concept where they call it the reticular activated system. If somebody mentions the color red, right, all you start seeing around you is the color red.
Exactly.
And obviously, if you bring out this curiosity, this choice, this courage, and if it's now out in the open, and you can't unsee it, and you can't unact or go on and act like you were doing before, which makes you do better choices, better relationships, and better everything else that comes along with it. So you're literally taking people in, with the resilience initiative that you're doing, and then giving them back as nicely packaged human beings in society. Now has
I will say it's a lifelong journey. No one should expect perfection, right? This is a lifelong journey for all of us. I am still using my protective patterns, and I will be till like the day before I die, and that's okay, right? We're not perfect. All we're hoping for is getting better. And that's our goal. We talk a lot about micro practices. We can, sitting at a stoplight, in that 30 seconds or a minute, we can do some breathing mindfully. We can think of curiosity. We can tap into our courage. When we're brewing coffee or making our tea, we can do small things, taking a shower, walking home, whatever. You can do small things that actually have a big trajectory over time. There's been a lot of science around micro habits, and changing habits is just one little step at a time. If we take a little step, so I don't give people a nicely packaged, I give them a roadmap and ideas about how they can do it. And they have to, people themselves have to make the choices and say, this is what I want to do, right? And you're continually making a choice. You could have 5 fights with your husband every single night, and on the 6th night, make a different choice. And then maybe the 7th night you go back and you still have that same fight, but maybe the 8th night you had a different choice. And then over time, you start saying, wow, you're not always fighting me about this issue. Right? And it's like, oh, okay, we can do something different. And so we're just looking for that, right?
It's the little hinges that swing the big doors. And
exactly.
And you're talking about traffic lights. I don't normally leave the house unless something drastic has happened. So every time I go out, I'm a little bit tense, and I'm seeing people, colors, things coming at me, and it's all stressful. There's one thing that I do whenever I get to a traffic light, and especially if it's red, I literally just sit back and relax my stomach muscles. Just like
exactly.
That. Just
That's
like
exactly
that.
Right. That's exactly right.
Because I'm getting tense and whatever I'm doing in between those traffic lights, and I'm trying to see nobody's cutting me and everything else. And the moment I do that, I just feel this sense of calm that just comes to me, and the world is fine again. Nobody gets hurt. So
exactly.
It's one of the, but for some people that might need, a hand so that they can work on these things, how can somebody listening to this maybe connect with Dovetail Learning, or maybe access to the resources that you mentioned so they can begin the resilience journey?
Like I said, we have a lot on our website. We have free downloadable resources. We have videos. We have maybe 40 webinars, both on our, I think 100 on our YouTube channel, right? We have a bunch of webinars on our, we have podcasts. We have, and that's all for free, right? You can tell. I like to give things away. And then we have the book that we wrote, which is super helpful, right? And you can buy that on the website. I mean, you can also buy it anywhere books are sold, but we like to not necessarily give our money to Jeff Bezos right now. Anyway, so you can buy the books and you can buy resources, and then also we have all sorts of training. If you're like, I really want to interact with someone, well, we have online courses. You can also set up. We do custom trainings for all sorts of organizations. So, because we know when groups do it together, there's a magic of people having a common language, being able to talk about the work together, and they really come through and come out the other side. And that's our true joy. And also being able to coach people to become other coaches of the work. We do a lot of coach certification. In fact, we have a new coach certification program opening up in April and May. We tend to do that once a year. That's an open cohort. But we also do coach certification for groups. Like I said, this group in Texas wanted a coach certification, or we have a family support center wanted to do it, or hospital clinics, or schools, or other types of organizations, businesses. They bring everybody in, and we train them all to be coaches in the We Are Resilient approach. And then we have online courses that you can do at your own pace. Like, okay, I just, I want to do it when I can, 15 minutes here, 15. We have those available as well. So we love to develop products to help people, you can tell. So we've done a lot of that. Yeah.
That's a lot of value. And thank you so much for sharing us that treasure trove. I will definitely put those links in the show notes so that people can definitely get started on that resilience journey, because you're absolutely right. It's those little micro habits that will actually make a huge difference, and the continuousness of it, because you just don't shower once and then you're done.
Well, I know. And that's one of the reasons we have our They Advice column. So people twice a week, they can get, oh yeah, that's right. That's about the skill of noticing myself, or that's about the curious mindset, or they learn about that. And we also have a newsletter that and we share stories about how it's working in our own life, because exactly for that, people are like, well, you're not getting enough sales from your newsletter. I'm like, yeah, but our newsletter is really about helping people see real life stories about how this interacts, because you just little reminders. Oh yeah, that breathing mindfully, I forgot about that. I can be doing that. Oh, maybe I should think about choice a little bit more deeply. That might help whatever I'm struggling with. So yeah, I definitely believe in that sort of drip method of learning.
Absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic, Meri. I mean, your journey, your wardrobe, everything just added color to our day today. And it's the work that you're doing that really, really makes a difference, because once one person figures out who they are and what their choices are, it makes the world a whole better place. So in your own little way, you literally making the world a better place. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I get up every morning, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are watching right now, I mean, as Meri obviously has been sharing her insights, I want you to just maybe think of your own protective patterns. Maybe you've noticed tendencies like you avoid difficult conversations, or you are overextending yourself to help others. And I think they have a name for it these days. They call it people pleasing, right? And, you just doing certain things, just hoping that people would like you. Please feel free to share your reflections in the comments below. And maybe Meri might actually pick one of you guys and help you out with one of her insights or two.
I would love it.
Thank you enough, Meri, for sharing your invaluable experiences and wisdom with us today. I mean, the dedication that you have to just fostering this resilience is truly inspiring. And I can't wait to see what's next in your world.
Thank you so much. I love the opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are watching and listening, if you found this conversation enlightening, please obviously do the right thing. Subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show so we can keep giving you more insightful content like this. Because in our next episode, we're going to be exploring ideas on how to enhance your happiness and well-being. And also, if you actually found value in this show, consider sharing it with somebody who might be experiencing their protective patterns without them realizing it, because fish don't see the water that they swim in, and neither can people see the air that they breathe. So if you can point it out to them and show them, they could actually maybe benefit from today's discussion on resilience. And while you're at it, thank you so much for choosing the Online Prosperity Show to getting information like this. Remember, building your inner strength is a journey that's best undertaken together, just like Mary says. Bye for now.